So hello and welcome. Today I'm speaking with Katie Holland on surviving a Kundalini awakening experience. Katie is a sacred dance therapist and the creator of Awakened Belly Dance. She experienced the Starseed awakening age 7, which activated her soul's mission. This, coupled with several spontaneous Kundalini awakenings as an adult, led her on an alchemical journey of inner transformation and an innate understanding of how to embody the new incoming light frequencies through conscious dance. And Katie has been exploring and teaching dance for many years, and exploring and teaching Tantra, Shamanism, yoga, meditation, and her website is awakenedbellydance.com, and there is also a Facebook link which will go out with this podcast. So hi Katie.
Hi Steve.
So you've survived several Kundalini experiences.
Yeah, I would say there's been 3 main explosions, and then there's been several mini ones in between, and I've been hit by lightning in the middle of all of that as well.
Oh, hit by lightning? I didn't know that bit. Yeah. Which was more difficult, the hit by lightning or the Kundalini?
I would say the Kundalini, definitely.
Oh, right.
I think the lightning was a supporting electrical act, I guess you could call it.
So, with the main ones, what was the experience of these main Kundalini awakening experiences?
For me, they were very physically debilitating because they all came out of nowhere. It wasn't that I was intentionally trying to work with Kundalini, especially with the first one. So they kind of just blew me to pieces, I guess. The first one, I would say it took me about 2 years before I really felt like this is me again, or a me that I could recognise. And they've all been coupled with almost like an ME type effect of how my body has dealt with it, and then had to work with integrating the energy.
Was there a trigger that you think triggered this, or was it just like lots of spiritual or movement practices that maybe accumulated to these experiences?
In the moments that it happened, there was no obvious trigger, because the first time I was brushing my teeth, and the second time I got a urinary tract infection, and that seemed to all be part of it. And then the third time I was in a check-in queue in the airport in Delhi. So in the actual moment, there was nothing obvious to show, okay, this is going to happen, or that I was doing something. I mean, in my life generally, I'm doing a lot of energy work and spiritual practice. So I guess you could say that it's been something that's activated and building up over time. But it's always been a shock when it's happened. Yeah.
Was there anything to do you think, with the Ascension 2012 point? When did these happen?
The first time was 13 years ago. Well, actually, they're all tied in really close with Lionsgate. So I know that me and you both have this love and something with the Lionsgate. So yeah, they've all been very connected with that. But 13 years ago, I didn't know about Lionsgate at all. So yeah, it wasn't with the 2012. That was in the middle of them happening. Because it was 13 years ago, and then 5 years ago, and then 3 years ago.
How did you know that they were Kundalini awakening experiences, not something else going on?
The first time I didn't know for quite a few months. I just didn't understand what was happening to me, and it was really from a teacher that I was studying with, who I found a few months later, and I was studying Gurdjieff sacred movements and Osho dynamic meditation and Sufi whirling with her, and she didn't tell me at first. She was a very very clever lady in the way that she supported us in our journeys. And it wasn't for about 2 or 3 years that she told me that the same thing had happened to her 30 years earlier, and that as soon as I walked into her house, she knew that I had experienced this Kundalini explosion, and so she knew exactly how to support me. But she didn't tell me all of the story at the beginning, because she was allowing me to find my way with it. And because I was living in India at that time, there were a couple of other people that I spoke to. I was studying yoga, and it just started to become apparent. I think, you know, when suddenly things start showing up in your life and articles or videos, and I started to put the pieces together and think, okay, this is what's happened. So then by the time the others activated, I recognized the same feelings and the same response in my body, so I knew what was happening.
Yeah. What did you do to cope with these experiences? What worked?
Well, that was also the thing, especially the first time, because I was completely in the dark with it. So I spent a lot of time crying to begin with, and I then found that it was really important to have routine with sleeping and eating. And before that, this wasn't something that I was very good at, you could say, because I was performing, and I would be up all night and traveling around for shows. So I really had to structure in having enough sleep and having good sleep, and then making sure that I ate regularly as well. And so it was almost the opposite. If you think of Kundalini, the energy's going upwards and outwards. I really had to look at really getting into my roots and what was the grounding, the grounding of my day-to-day life. So having a little bit more organization in myself, and just the way that I responded to things, it was really about the grounding. And then also I found acupuncture and osteopathy really, really helpful as well.
I guess actually I should ask you, because not everyone listening may know exactly what a Kundalini awakening experience is. How would you describe it to somebody who's not really heard about it? You know, what is it?
Okay. I mean, obviously I can only explain from what's happened, what I felt in my body, but I've been witness and supporting many other people in Kundalini experiences within my work as well. And I think that if you go to a facilitator or a teacher who has experienced the Kundalini awakening, there can be a natural transfer or activation in you, being with them in their session. So what I've witnessed in the people I've supported has been much gentler, because I've come at it from a very grounded, embodied approach. But for me personally, it started off as a really intense heat at the base of my spine that I've felt move up and into the back of my third eye, and then that's usually been accompanied by vomiting and a loss of perception with my sight and hearing, and also where I'm judging distances to be. And I guess just a complete shift in consciousness of everything that's going on around me, and feeling like I've been thrown into a washing machine.
Oh dear, yes. Well, I kind of have had my own experience of something like that, so I know what you mean. I mean, for me, one of the things that worked was just laying in the park under a tree for 3 hours, and that seemed to help. Did you find nature helpful?
Yeah, nature and really just coming back to myself and listening to me, and I guess streamlining my life. You know, it's almost like shards falling away of whether relationships or situations that I was in. It was really, there was a big U-turn for me the first time, because I was very much immersed in the showbiz performance world in India. And I'd always had this connection with sacred dance and I was teaching Reiki years before that, and very much involved in energy work. But I guess I'd made a choice because I was in my mid-20s, and I'd thought, well, I can come back to the energy work any time, but I can't necessarily do this performance life anytime. So I felt like I'd made this very definite choice, but what I didn't realise was that the energy side was always going to come for me, and I couldn't not be doing that. And I feel that first Kundalini awakening really brought me back to my path and on to pushing me forward with creating Awaken Belly Dance, because that, although I still perform now and I really love it, but I also had this other mission that I really needed to do, and that was also what activated when I was 7. And I guess I had strayed a little bit from it at that point.
So do you think that these awakenings come to push us back on our path?
I think, yeah, I mean, again, I can say for myself, definitely for me, it's been a micro aligning each time, and the last time it happened, well, it was the second time, sorry, when I had the UTI. It was in those 5 days where I was really out of my body, and I got all the name Awaken Belly Dance, I got the logo, I got the final insights into how to launch the facilitator training, and I feel that it was by having this out-of-body near-death experience that I was able to access that information. So it sounds quite hardcore, but it seems to be the way that my soul chose to do it in this fast track, I guess, this fast track intensity.
Yeah.
And I think because maybe I have this stubbornness in other ways that I wasn't allowing myself to go to that place, and I needed that real shock and kick to get me back on track again. So it's like Kundalini micromanagement, I guess, something like that.
Have you learned to kind of manage these experiences, or are they diminishing as you're kind of more on your track?
Yeah, I've definitely learned how to manage them, and I can tell now if something's starting. And I mean, something happened again. It was Lionsgate last year, and it began, and I was crying a lot, and I just had to really go into myself and just be really present with me, and okay, how do I feel, what's happening in my body, and then really importantly to breathe. And it took me about 3 hours, and I felt the energy move up, and I felt it move through me, and an integration, and then I was back in the room again, so to speak. Yeah. And then I was totally okay. Whereas 2 years ago when that had happened, I was in bed for 5 weeks and literally couldn't walk or really eat or anything. So I felt like that was quite an achievement, that I'd come to a point of being able to just manage it much more, and also benefit from it as well, because it felt like another big shift in those few hours.
You mentioned you do support other people in their awakenings. Is this something you do in one-to-one sessions or workshops?
Yeah, and it's not always necessarily planned that that's what somebody has come for specifically. It would just arise spontaneously, and this could be in Awaken Belly Dance, it could be in a Reiki session or in a dance session, and what I've noticed is that the energy is a bit like dominoes. One person in the room will start, and then it will travel around, and especially with Awaken Belly Dance. And I just really work on grounding and being really embodied with the group and the process that I'm taking them through. So this has been showing up as people having full body orgasms and really blissed out states. So because I know when I talk about what's happened for me, people can feel, oh, this sounds really scary, but it's I didn't feel scared when it happened to me, and I feel like I experienced it in that intensity so that I was ready for anything in the way that I can support anybody else, and no one else that I've worked with has had that kind of experience that I had. It's been much more embodied and more creative in the way that they've been able to take it into their life.
Now, I know you've got an event coming up in September the 8th, I believe. Can you say something about that event?
Yeah, it's a webinar which is all about understanding Kundalini. So obviously this is really unique for each person, and in the way that it shows up in their life and how they then work with it. But obviously it's a very, very powerful creative tool and a way of really knowing yourself, because when you have a Kundalini activation, you can't hide from any part of you. It really makes you go inwards and look at all aspects of yourself. So the webinar will be some processes in how to work with the Kundalini, to recognize it, to move it around and through your body, and also grounding processes and just ways to be really embodied with it and work with it as a tool, so that it's not about you controlling it or it controlling you. It's how you can work with it in integration and really come into your own alignment with your Kundalini.
Well, we're meeting up in Glastonbury soon, which is I'm looking forward to.
Yes, me too. Very much.
Until then, Keith, thank you so much for spending the time chatting about this experience. I'm sure a lot of people are going to find it really interesting and amazing and helpful. So
I hope so.
And I'll be putting links out to your website and Facebook group. So anybody interested in connecting with Katie, please check the links with this podcast. So until Glastonbury, Katie.
Yes, not long.
Bye.